with the middle fingers lightly touching just beneath the navel. Oh, sorry, yeah, then you've got the option to do that thing. I should have done that first. Apologies. So we're going to come into a still point after our day of whatever we've been doing. It's going to give you a chance to, as it were, download your day physically and mentally into the ground. So you just want to connect with your body in the simplest way possible. Over the weekend with our students, I was talking about an approach to mindfulness that we're going to be familiar with in some of us, which is this practice of staying at the base of awareness, with the idea of reducing the expenditure of unnecessary energy mentally by getting into following thoughts, etc., and elaborating. So staying at the base is an aspect of mindfulness that's really important. We can really apply this in yoga, just by being aware of the base of experience, particularly sensory experience, particularly Vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And we don't have to conceptualize this to ourselves again and again. We don't have to keep saying awareness of pleasant, unpleasant, neutral thoughts, feelings. It's enough just to be aware of it, just to turn your attention to that experience is enough. And with the less verbalization in one's head, the better. Just feeling what you feel, letting the weight drop down through the back, through the kidneys, through the heart, through the pelvis, through the feet. And connect with your breathing in some way, either diaphragmatically or just being aware of the softness of the breath. And this helps us all become a bit more present and a bit less involved in our thought processes. Feeling the body as the body and the breath as the breath, and not much else. The mental processes running on, just let that be more in the background and keep your body and sensory awareness more to the foreground. For another minute or so, just resting here. I'm just going to be quiet for a minute. Now, if you'd like to roll onto your side, one side or the other, and from your side, if you come around slowly into the Virasana position, okay, just take your time. So we're going to be spending a bit more time in the poses because of the nature of the poses. We're not going to be moving around so much, although we will do some sun salutation about halfway through the practice. I wanted to focus a bit more tonight on these poses for various reasons, grounding. They work on the pelvis, and they're not poses that we tend to include a lot in our own yoga practice at home. I think nowadays we don't do too much of this kind of work. So some of it's quite strong, but I just encourage you to watch that. Just watch how you go into the pose. Obviously, you've always got the proviso of lessening the strength or the intensity of the pose by adapting it. Always, that's always there. And if we're having problems, in particular with some poses, we can just change them, okay? So we're going to work gradually into a series of sitting poses, working around Virasana, and then later on Upavista Virasana, and then later on Baddha Konasana. So they're all to do with the lateral movement of the pelvis and working in the joints around here, okay, the hips, but also includes the spine, shoulders. So first of all, just bring in the buttocks to sit inside the arch, the inner arch of your feet rather, two of them, you've got two. So the buttocks just sort of seem to be cupped nicely by the inner arches of the feet, if you feel that, yeah. You should be able to just slip into that space there. Keep your knees and your feet, legs together, grounding the feet gently on the floor. And then we're going to rest the hands just on the thighs like this, very simple. Okay. Gradually growing the spine a little. So it's more a gesture of centeredness. Being aware of the breath as it moves down through the lower portion of the trunk, causing this sense of expansion through the lower part of the trunk, laterally. Just connect with that for the next 10 breaths as your main focus. So the in and out breath in the lower part of the trunk. Whole body awareness. Okay, now interlocking the fingers closely at the roots of the fingers. Palms of the hands extending forwards and then upwards towards the sky. Small finger tipping back towards the crown of the head. Thumb lifting. Inner arms lifting, shoulder blades resting downwards. I'm just aware of this shift in the dynamic of the breath now with the arms raised above the shoulders. And we're going to keep our attention focused around the breath. Elevating through the body, but not necessarily lifting the shoulder blades. Okay. The spine growing, the neck growing, pelvis grounding, shins grounding to the floor. Okay, now we're going to bring our left arm around behind us, left hand between the shoulder blades, right hand drops back to catch the opposite hand, or fingertips. Okay. Keeping the neck fairly free, so it's one of these poses where you can easily compromise the neck position. So try to keep the sense of the neck growing through the spine, right elbow extending upwards, left elbow drawing down gently. Grounding the feet and grounding the shins. Just lightly grounding the shins and the feet. Or just breathing through the pose into the whole body awareness. I'm going to change now to the other side. One smooth movement. So already the practice is giving us something to do, right, with the nature of sensations arising in the body. Very clear, palpable, tangible experiences. And just see if we can keep our mind resting around the base of the experience, so the basic sensory experience in the body. And then releasing the arms. Okay. Taking the hands onto the thighs, just pausing for a moment. And then we're going to come into Upavista Virasana. So taking the knees wider, you might choose to turn onto the other side of your mat, so you're on the side on if you want. Okay, if the knees on the floor or whatever you're sitting on isn't agreeable, do keep yourself on the mat by turning yourself around onto the side. Okay. So we're going to plant the pelvis down as much as we can towards the floor between the feet. If that's too intense, bring the knees in a bit more. Okay, so just take yourself as wide as you're able to, or sub-maximal. So the big toes are meeting underneath the coccyx, but the knees are out. Yeah. So that's the sort of classical position, but within that we can adjust according to what we need to do. Yeah. Even use a block if it's too intense, too demanding. Once again, interlocking the fingers nice and closely at the roots, extending forwards and reaching up. One smooth movement. So this sort of pushes the pelvis down gently as we lift the trunk up. The action of the arms draws the pelvis down more. Keep the heart center resting in towards the back of the body rather than extending the heart forwards too much, okay? So keep quiet in the heart area. And the extension through the trunk is gentle, it's with the in-breath. Now we're going to take the hands down in front of us. And we're going to slide our trunk forwards onto the floor. Okay, so the hands come forwards. You might want to walk your hands forwards rather than let them slide forwards. And then without adjusting the position, the distance between the pelvis and the heels, to see if you can lower the trunk down, pelvis turning around over the top of the femur bones, resting the head down or keeping the forearms on the floor. It really depends upon how intensely you want to work in the pose. Okay. So either extending the arms fully forwards or keeping the forearms resting on the ground. And just see if we can give up the weight of the trunk for the next 8 breaths to the floor. Yeah, so let your body become heavy. So it's quite demanding on the inner groins. Now walking the hands back in towards you, lifting the trunk and the head. As you come back, bring the hands just beneath the chest or the shoulders, and then lift up the pelvis and bring the knees in. Okay, so we close up in that way. Lift up the pelvis and then bring the knees in. So we're going to extend the legs out now. Before coming into downward facing dog, you might just want to stretch your legs back a couple of times because what you've done has been rather demanding for the hips. Yeah? And then set yourself into the downward facing dog pose. Broad hands. Lifting the pelvis directed back towards the sky. Imagine the corner between the ceiling and the wall. Yeah, so we're aiming to create a diagonal line of energy through the spine, through the shoulders, through the pelvis. You're now raising, lifting, and extending back through your right foot. Keep your left foot grounded on the floor, obviously. Reaching back, keeping the hip level. Weight drops down through the hands. And we extend firmly through the legs. We engage the whole of the leg, both in the lift and the extension. And then bring that foot down and change to the other side. So the left foot now sweeping back up, reaching through the heel, engaging the whole leg. That's it. That's it. Drawing up and extending back. And then bring that foot down. And we're going to walk small steps, like pigeon steps, all the way to the front of the mat. And once we arrive at the front of the mat, we're going to come to standing, because now we're going to do a series of sun salutations. So it's shifting gear for a moment in practice. Okay. So from here, in the front of the mat, middle fingers drawing a line down the outside edge of the legs through the knees to the ankles. Sorry, my head is chopped off there. I'm going to get the head of the feet. So from there, grounding the feet on the in-breath, extend the hands up to the sky. One smooth in-breath, lifting the hands. On the out-breath, folding forwards, take the hands all the way down to the floor. Once the hands are down, step your left foot back, all the way back, and bring your left knee to the floor, coming into lunge pose. Okay, so we can happily let the knee ride forwards over the ankle. It's not a problem here, not in this position. Okay, from here, stepping the right foot back, coming down via the 8-point pose. So bringing the chest to the floor, remember, keep the feet down, knees down, chin down on the floor. And then sweeping through, keeping the elbows tucked into Bhujangasana, engaging the legs, lifting the heart center, and then release the head down. Come back to downward facing dog. Good. Working there for a bit. Okay, shifting the weight towards the hands, lift up your left foot and step your left foot forwards. Right knee comes down. Lunge pose, classical lunge pose. Okay. Tucking your back foot under, lift your back knee and step forwards. Folding into the legs on the out breath. On the in breath, use the in breath to carry you back up to standing position. One smooth movement. And on the exhale, we fold forwards again, all the way down to the floor with the hands. Okay, this time stepping the right foot back. Coming back to the lunge position. Okay. And then we're going to go through the sequence 7 more times, okay? Down through the 8-point pose. Elbows keeping tucked into the sides of the body. Drawing up the heart center. So really get a sense of these individual movements within the sequence. Okay. Chin into the top of the chest. Push up. Come back into downward facing dog. And remain there for another 5 breaths. Okay. Transfer the weight more into the hands and the arms. Going to step your your left foot forwards all the way. Coming back into the lunge pose. From the lunge pose, we're going to lift the hands above the shoulders this time. One movement, arching through the spine. On the exhale, take the hands down to the floor again, and then lift the back knee and step the back foot forwards. Exhaling into the legs, and on the inhale, back to standing position. And again, on the exhale, folding forwards. This time, one smooth movement without hesitating on the way down. Okay, left foot goes back. Lifting the hands above the shoulders, lowering the pelvis, arching through the spine. Exhaling, bringing the hands down and stepping the front foot back. Once again, coming into the 8-point pose. Bodhiyoga-24. Engaging the legs. Exhale, chin tucking into the top of the chest, head down. Pressing up the pelvis, lifting back into downward facing dog. Okay, looking to the front of your mat, stepping the right foot forwards. Back knee comes down, hands lift above the shoulders. One smooth movement, lowering the pelvis, arching through the spine. Really opening up the fronts of the shoulders. And exhale, bringing the hands down and stepping your back foot forwards. Exhaling into the legs. Inhale, the inhale carries you back up to standing. And exhale, folding forwards again. So we're just going to come all the way down. Right foot steps back, lunge pose. Okay, lunge pose to the 8-point pose. That means the knees, the feet, the chest, hands, chin come to the floor temporarily. Bhujangasana, from Bhujangasana, downward facing dog. Okay, weight transfers into the hands more. Step your right foot forwards, left knee comes down. Once again, drawing up from classical lunge into low lunge, hands above the shoulders, arching back, reopening up the fronts of the shoulders and the armpits. Okay, so you're lifting the heart center. On your next exhale, take the hands down, step your back foot forwards, fold into your legs. On the next inhale, up you come. Exhaling, folding all the way back down once again. Okay, this time the left foot comes back. Classical lunge. From lunge, 8-point pose. Bhujangasana. From Bhujangasana, downward facing dog. Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Shifting the weight forward, step your left foot forwards. Come up once again. Hands above the shoulders, arching through the spine, lowering the pelvis down. Exhale. As you exhale, take the hands down and step your back foot forwards. As you inhale, come back to standing. We're just going to remain in standing for a bit. So take the feet just a little bit wider than your pelvis. Feet turned in slightly with the heels out, so the toes are turning in a little bit more. Heels are turning out a little bit more. Grounding the four corners of the feet. On the next in-breath, we're going to raise the arms and take the hands onto the elbows. Okay, arching through the spine. On the out-breath, tipping forwards over the pelvis. So the pelvis, releasing the arms down to the floor. Crown of the head towards the floor. Softening the knees if you want to. Okay, from there, I'd like you to soften your knees anyway, if you didn't before. Just re-clarify the length in your spine, so let the spine grow as long as possible. Okay, from the base all the way through to the crown of the head. Before we come up, we lengthen the spine, and then we're going to lift the head, lift the trunk, come up to standing. Bring your knees and feet together. Okay, bend your knees and feet. So we're going to come into Garudasana, but first of all, we're going to arrange the arms and then the legs. Okay. So front pelvis lifting in towards the torso a little bit, rather than the tailbone going down and back. Think about lifting the tailbone under. Extend the arms out and cross the right arm over the left arm. Okay. Nice and closely at the tops of the arms as much as possible. Okay, taking hold of the thumb or taking hold of the palm of the hand, whichever you need to get hold of. All right. And then lifting the elbows away from the trunk. So extending the fingers up to the sky. So there's an expression of expansion through the hands. And then we're going to see if we can bring the legs into play or not. Okay. We'll see how this goes. So we're going to bring the left leg over the right leg. Find a point of gaze to help you balance. Stay with the breath, also to help you balance. Elbows lifting up, shoulder blades broadening at the base. So the southern tip of the shoulder blades widening. That's it. That's it. And release. Straighten the legs for a moment. Just come into Tadasana. Good. And then once again, we're going to sit down as if to go into Utkatasana. We'll arrange the arms first of all. So now the opposite arm over the top. So right arm, or is it the left arm? Left arm over the top of the right arm. So once again, think about lifting the elbows, broadening the southern tips of the shoulder blades away from each other. So the base of the shoulder blades broaden out through the rhomboids. And then we're going to bring the right leg over the left leg, if we can. So this somewhat helps us establish balance before more easily. And release. Okay. Take your feet a bit wider than your pelvis, toes turned in, heels out a little bit. Reach up and take the elbows. On the out breath, moving through the pelvis, over the tops of the thigh bones. Releasing the head down and taking the hands down on the floor. Okay. And releasing the crown of the head towards the floor as well. Very good. Just maintaining this pose a bit longer. Working with a more extended leg version or keeping the knees soft as you like. Okay. If you're working with an extended leg version, bring the awareness into the pelvis, because not unlike wide leg forward bend, we need to broaden through the back of the pelvis with standing forward bends in particular. Yeah? Okay, hands down, walk your feet back, come back into downward facing dog. And then from here, we're going to sit down with our feet in front of us now. So we're changing tack again. And we're going to come into the more classical form of Bodhiyoga-24. I know some people prefer to use the wall to do this pose. And sometimes if we're doing it as a long holding pose, then often I'll take people against the wall. But we're going to use the hands underneath the feet. So in a way that acts as the wall for us. So you're going to bring the hands underneath the feet and just clasp the fingers together. Knees draw out. Heels come in as far as you can draw them in without, creating yourself discomfort in the hips beyond reasonable. You should already find, due to the work you've done, that the hips are a bit more open than they would have been. You wouldn't start off with the Bodhiyoga-24 series. But at this stage, we're probably okay to come into these poses. So there's a sense of the feet gently pressing together. The thighs are lengthening out towards the knees. And then grow the spine upwards. Okay. Growing the spine, keep in touch with the breath. So through the breath, we grow the spine, as it were. So the inhalation aids that process. And we come back to basic experience of sensory awareness in the body. Okay, taking the thumbs inside and just beneath the balls of the feet, so the thumbs come inside. We're going to see if we can turn the soles of the feet upward gently towards us. So it's like the soles of the feet turning up towards the sky. All right, and that's going to give us a little bit of movement here in the pelvis to come forwards. So we're going to come forwards, but obviously at no point we're going to force ourselves to come into the forward bend. All the while, focus on the movement of the pelvis and the relationship between the movement of the pelvis and the top of the thigh bones. Okay. In other words, don't think about flexing the spine to get the head down. Keep the spine elongating. And just gently tacking forwards on the out breath. When you come to your limit, just maintain yourself just on the limit, not going above the limit of the sense of stretch. Just stay there. Even encouraging the breath to come into the areas of the body that feel a little bit like they're resisting. Feeling this pose. Okay, raising the head, growing the spine, taking the hands underneath the feet again, just for a little bit longer. Drawing the knees open. To re-clarify the sense of length in the spinal column. Very good. Okay, bringing the hands behind you. Take 5 breaths, resting back onto the hands, but keeping the legs arranged as they are for a moment. So you can draw the trunk back slightly. And gently push the pelvis forwards and the kidneys come inwards. Okay, so the kidneys come towards the belly. And the front of the pelvis gently draws upwards. Okay, superb. Okay, we're going to extend the legs forwards in front of us. Now coming into more classical form of Dandasana. Keeping the feet together, heels projecting forwards. Take the fingertips down just behind your pelvis, so just behind your pelvis, and a bit wider if your arms are longer. Okay, and then draw the kidneys forwards again. And just re-clarify once again the length in your spine, okay? So reaching up through the spinal column. And then if you want, you can drop the chin down towards the top of the sternum. This sort of closes the circuit of the posture, as it were. And you might just work a little bit here with, through 8 breaths or 10 breaths, the bandhas. So engaging a little bit through Mula Bandha, through the pelvis, through the lower abdominal region, on the in-breath. So by maintaining a gentle tone in the lower belly, this is the Mula Bandha in-breath, sometimes called the Mula Bandha in-breath. Lengthening the spine. Okay, reaching up, sweeping the arms and hands above the shoulders on the out breath. So you're going to try and get the shoulders and the arms soft, as if they were just floating there, like reeds in a river. And then from there, we're going to come forwards, just tacking forwards through the pelvis. We find a position where we feel, okay, that's where I want to come to. I don't want to come to any further than that, any deeper than that. And then we're going to reach out and take hold of the ankles or the feet. Once again, re-clarifying the length of the spine. And then we see if we can bring the trunk further forwards, okay? But if that means somehow that we're going to compromise the lumbar spine, then it's better to bring the knees up, soften the knees. And again, working into this pose, as with all poses, with the breath on the out breath, let yourself soften into the pose. On the in breath, you might find a little bit more length through the trunk. So the whole thing becomes a lot more workable if we utilize the breath in the postures, not just trying to kind of muscle our way into them. Watching the body, watching the breath, watching what happens with sensation. Does sensation meet something else and then become thought? Or can we just keep our awareness around the area of what seems to be arising as sensation? Okay, on the inhale, we're going to come up, just re-clarify again the length in the spine. So we're going to try Pravrita Paschimottanasana. Yeah, let's try that. So that's we rotate the trunk. So it's quite different from the classical Paschimottanasana because you're involving a rotation of the trunk, but see what you can do, okay? So coming into the pose again, just re-clarify as we did before, the sense of the arms being very, very soft in the shoulders, okay? So not kind of trying to make a rigidity through the arms and shoulders, try to keep it quite soft, okay? And that helps the spine as well, okay? So any sense of that with the arms is going to do that in the spine. We don't want that, okay? So kind of fluidity. On the exhalation, we're going to come forwards. We're going to see if we can turn the trunk towards the left side, okay? Now, it's not necessarily easy to do the next thing, which is to take the left hand, right hand, and catch the outside of the left foot, okay? So you might find that you can just do that and that's enough. That might be enough, okay? You're a bit more practice, then you're going to bring the left arm over and catch the top of the right foot. So we've both basically got the hands catching the feet, lengthening and rotating. So you probably can find one point in that pose where you can rest for a bit without forcing yourself into the pose. All right, release and inhale, come up. Not a pose you can spend a huge amount of time in. Really clarify this kind of softening and lengthening through the trunk, through the shoulders. All right, I'm going to come back in again, exhaling, folding forwards, and then twisting this time towards the right side. We're going to catch if we can. Left hand outside of the right foot. Okay, that might be enough. The elbow tends to hook over the shin. A bit more practiced, you can reach over with the right arm, catch the left foot. Twisting, rotating from the thoracic area. Okay. Four more breaths. All right. Look into the legs, unhook yourself. I tend to straighten myself up first, and then I use the hands to encourage myself to lengthen the spine as I come up, so I don't lose all of that lengthening. Once again, arms floating above the head. Yeah, very, very soft. Good. Now take the feet as wide as you can. We're going to come into Konasana. Upavista Konasana. You need to just find the suboptimal or maximum distance you want to take your feet to. And then, so we're going to do two variations here. One, the more classical variation of coming forwards between the feet, between the legs, and then rotating towards one leg and then towards the other leg. Okay, so there's two variations. We're going to start off, first of all, coming forwards symmetrically. So once again, floating the arms up. Pelvis grounds itself as you do this. Quite soft in the chest. Long but soft. Yep. And then we're going to come forwards. So we need to engage the legs as we come forwards. You might even say there's a bit more activity in the legs than there is in the trunk. So the legs are more active, but the trunk is a little bit softer. Yep. And then you're going to walk the hands forwards, releasing the head down. If you find that you're really caused to arch the lumbar spine, to bring the head down, keep the head lifted and the spine lengthening. So try not to give in to the temptation to just let the spine do all the work from the lumbar. Once we're into the pose, let's find a way of resting and softening into the pose. Now let go of the effort in the legs for a moment. We'll take a more yin approach to this posture for the next 10 breaths. Yielding, not reaching, just yielding. Reconnect with your breath, reconnect with the awareness of the sense base of the pose. Bringing the mind a bit closer to the sense of sensation, the stronger sensations in the body. So walking towards. Resting the attention in the practice. Okay, now place your hands down and use your hands to press yourself up. Come up with a spine that's long, growing the spine again. If you want, just rock the pelvis backwards and forwards a few times because it can be a little bit tense between the spine and the sacrum. Doing that. And now turning your trunk towards the right leg, so drawing to the right, heart center, looking towards the foot. Okay, going to reach up. And we're going to extend over towards the right leg, catching the right leg. If it's too full on the heels, if the heels are not very comfortable, then put your heels on the mat and put your bottom off the mat. That's better. Turning the trunk towards the leg. In this pose, the legs are active. They have to be. So we keep activating the legs, extending to the heels, broadening the toes. So we're bringing into play Hasta Pada Bandha. Okay, on the in-breath, drawing up, turning to the other side, one smooth movement all the way to the other side. No hesitation, just come straight in. Turning the trunk to the other side. Breathing in and breathing out. Okay, inhaling up, you come to center. You'll bring the hands behind the backs of the legs. Lean back slightly and pick the legs up and bring them together. Okay, so we're changing tack again now. We're going to come into Supta Parangustasana 1 and 2. So these are reclining leg stretches, basically. And then we're going to finish off towards the end of the asana session with a bit of bridge pose and a twist, and that's it, okay? So if you'd like to lie back, I'm mainly going to talk you through this. I've already done the practice once today. I've done most of it again the second time. So just lying back in a straight line, arms and legs, arms by the side of the body, legs together, feet together. Now this practice, this particular pose and next one might have been benefited from using a belt, but we'll just practice to the extent that we can without a belt. Don't worry too much about that. Okay, so both legs extended out. Now we're going to bring the right knee towards the trunk, towards the chest, and take the hand behind the back of the leg and straighten the leg to the vertical. Okay. So right leg to the vertical, left leg stays resting on the floor, engaged, active, reaching through the heel. Now, if you wish, you could slide the hands more towards the calf muscle and work to extend the leg. Okay? Keeping the head down to start with. So this is Supta Parangustasana 1. And we can do a variation here if we want, which is to lift the trunk. So you're lifting the trunk towards the knee, looking towards the knee, and then that allows you to bring the leg perhaps a little bit closer to the trunk. Okay. Keep really soft around the neck and the face and the shoulders here. Don't clench your teeth. Don't tense the face. No need to use the teeth or the face in this pose. Won't help at all. All right, and release down. Release the head back onto the floor for a moment. Bring the left knee in towards the trunk, hands behind the back of the thigh. Extend the leg to the vertical. Interlocking the fingers behind the back of the knee or the calf muscle. We're then going to see if we can find a little bit more length through the leg, lifting the trunk towards the leg, drawing the leg gently back towards the trunk. Breathing through the pose, keeping the right leg active, extending through the heel. Wonderful. Good, okay. Now come down onto the floor, straighten the whole body out to the floor again for a moment. Come back into a neutral position. Hands resting on the floor, head back. Reconnecting with the body. Supta Parangustasana 2 is to take the leg out to the side. Okay, so we're going to bring the right leg back up, right knee into the trunk, right leg to the vertical, and see if we can catch hold of the big toe inside. If not, just catch hold of the shin. Okay, so your knee might still be bent, that's fine. Okay, rooting the pelvis down to the floor because we don't want the pelvis to lift either side. Left arm grounding itself at the height of the shoulder to the left side. And then bring your leg out towards the right side. Right leg to the right side. Keeping the pelvis rooted, keeping the shoulders rooted. Effectively extending through both legs equally. That's it. So grounding and extending. By now, the body should be more than enough prepared for this. Thighs engaged. Okay, bringing the leg up to the midline and across the midline, we're going to take the right leg to the left side, catching the right foot in the left hand. And we cross the midline of the body, keeping the lower leg straight. Right arm now extends out to the other side. Gazing up to the sky. So we've just reversed the pose. Grounding the shoulders. And then releasing back to the center. Okay. Neutral position for a couple of breaths. Left knee comes into the trunk. We started from Supta Parangustasana 1. Extending the left leg. Right arm grounds my trunk on the floor. And the left leg comes out to the side, broadening through the shoulders, grounding the shoulders. So the legs extending through to the heels on both sides. Shouldn't feel like too much of an effort now after what we've done. Should be fairly workable. Keep the attention in the whole body. If you're a bit more practiced, you can work with lifting the left foot higher as if to come towards the shoulder. So you're challenging a little bit more deeply the hip joint. Rowing the spine. And the left leg comes back up to the center and all the way across the midline of the body. Right hand takes the left foot and we sweep across, one smooth movement. Not if you've got a microphone in the way. You come all the way over, grounding the left arm on the floor. Okay, coming back to the center. You come into the semi-supine pose now. Ready for the setup for bridge pose. So placing your heels down under the knees, width of the pelvis, hands on the floor. And just connecting with the shape of the pose for a few breaths. Okay, pressing down through the feet, lifting the pelvis. One smooth movement coming up, lifting the spine. Walking the shoulder blades underneath us so that we can just maintain that sense of higher lift in the pelvis. Trying to keep the shape in the neck. Okay, so we'll keep the cervical curve where it should be. So keeping the chin moving away from the chest, pelvis lifting, heart center drawing up towards the chin, and the chin stays back. Okay, releasing down to the floor now. I'd like you to just bring your knees in towards your chest and practice Apanasana 10 times. Okay. So I should have said just practice Apanasana 10 times. So the knees come in and away from the chest, very, very lightly, very softly. Hardly any effort. And then finishing with a simple reclining twist, any twist that you want to do. Practice that for a couple of minutes. Okay, if you haven't changed sides already, change sides now. Okay, just taking any movement you want to take now before coming into the sitting posture. We're going to meditate for a short while. So just grounding the attention in the body, letting awareness come into the body just as the weight of the body falls onto the ground. We're just going to try and keep our attention for the next few minutes at the base of our experience. So I'm just aware of the emergence, disappearance of feelings in the body or in the mind. The pleasantness and unpleasantness and neutrality of our basic experience. Coming and going, changing one thing into another. Coming again and disappearing again. We just give our experience the space to be felt by not doing any more than that, just experiencing. Same with our mental states, whatever mood we find ourselves in, whatever state of mind we find ourselves in. I'm noticing maybe how the state of mind has shifted since the start of the practice. Maybe it's really evident. We're just aware that our experience is this constantly changing process. Always has done. It always will do. Once we've got a sense of the broad picture of our experience, we're going to rest our attention back into the breath. And just staying very lightly conscious of the breath. Just feel free to keep practicing like this, or if you wish, you can stop and do something else.